The inspiration of LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan may just be the greatest NBA player we've ever seen, and today we find out just how good was prime Michael Jordan actually. Michael Jordan was drafted with the 3rd overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft by the Chicago Bulls. Jordan dominated in the 1984 Olympics, making him a star, so by the time Jordan played his first game in the NBA, it wasn't long before crowds began to sell out. Michael Jordan didn't see much success until 1987, where the Bulls made the postseason with a losing record. The Celtics dismantled the young Bulls even after a 47-point performance in Game 1 and the infamous 63-point performance in Game 2. The Celtics were just too good, as the teamwork from Larry Bird, Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish were too much for Chicago. Jordan would finally win a playoff series in 1989 as they defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games, which is a 7-game series in today's NBA, due to the last-second heroic shot by Jordan at the buzzer. From there, Jordan and the Bulls would lose to the bad boy Pistons for the next 2 seasons. After a gut-wrenching Game 7 loss to Detroit, Jordan dedicated the entire offseason to get better and most importantly get stronger, as MJ put on 15 pounds of muscle and was ready to extract revenge. This marked the beginning of prime Michael Jordan and his dominance over the NBA for the next decade. Jordan led the Bulls to a 61-win season in 1991 as they met the Detroit Pistons yet again in the Eastern Conference Finals. Detroit was led by Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and Bill Laimbeer, as the big 3 in Chicago at the time was Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and defensive specialist Horace Grant. Chicago won games 1 and 2 at home, and the Pistons knew that a bounce back would be necessary to go for the three-peat, but they never did, as MJ and co were truly ready to make it to the finals and get past the Pistons. The time had come as Chicago made it to their first NBA Finals. The finals opponent would be Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. This team was no Showtime, as Kareem had retired, but Magic was still at the peak of his game. In Game 1 at the United Center in Chicago, the Lakers pulled through a 91-93 victory behind a triple-double from Magic. Jordan had guarded him in Game 1, but coach Phil Jackson made an adjustment that would save the series, as he put the defensive beast Scottie Pippen to guard Magic full court and not give him an inch of space to work with. The result was a lot more energy for Jordan to score on the offensive end, and Magic struggling to even make a pass, let alone a shot. Pippen locked up Johnson as the Bulls would win 4 straight games to win Michael Jordan's first NBA title. In the 1992 season, the Bulls managed to be as hungry as ever, as many will tell you that this was the best version of the Chicago Bulls, as in 1992 they had a well-rounded roster of John Paxson, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and Bill Cartwright. MJ was always the star of the show, as Jordan averaged 30.1 points, 6.4 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 2.3 steals on 51.9% shooting in 1992, as the Chicago Bulls would be right back to the NBA Finals. However, this time it would be Clyde Drexler and the Portland Trail Blazers who would be the finals opponent. Before the series, the marquee matchup that the nation was talking about was Jordan versus Drexler, as many analysts started comparing the two. Jordan looked on with disapproval, as he was quoted saying he was offended by the comparison and he was ready to show the world who really was the better player. In Game 1, Michael Jordan shrugged off the Portland Trail Blazers as he shot an NBA Finals record 6 threes in the first half, as Chicago defeated Portland 122-89. Jordan attacked Drexler every night, proving the comparison to be fraudulent. Portland managed to pick up 2 wins, but in Game 6, the Jordan-led Bulls would win a 2nd straight championship, and he was far from done yet. The toughest battles Michael Jordan ever had to face were always in the Eastern Conference playoffs. First, it was Larry Bird and the Celtics. Very briefly, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers, then the Detroit Pistons, and now it was the New York Knicks. Michael Jordan knew that 3 titles would put him on the Mount Rushmore of basketball instantly, as Magic and Isaiah had won 2 straight, and it was time for Michael Jordan to one-up them and go for the three-peat. The Bulls swept the first and second round matchups against the Hawks and the Cavaliers, and that Eastern Conference Finals matchup felt like deja vu, as the New York Knicks were the second coming of the bad boy Pistons, as the series was going to be a hard-fought, physical one. New York stunned the Bulls by winning Games 1 and 2, as on the eve of Game 2, Jordan and his father would go to Atlantic City to take some time away from basketball and spend some time together. Meanwhile, the press saw it a different way, as they said Jordan had his head in the wrong place and wasn't focused on winning. With all the allegations surrounding the incident, Jordan let his game do the talking, as he dominated the Knicks and won 4 straight games to close them out in 6. Jordan had a terrific season in 93, as he averaged 32.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 2.8 steals on 49.5% shooting. But even with those averages, he wasn't the MVP, as the finals opponent Charles Barkley won the award on 21.6 points, 11.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 1.6 steals on 49.5% shooting. This was all Jordan needed to light the flame inside of him, as Phoenix had home court advantage, but Jordan couldn't care less, as in Games 1 and 2, Chicago would win both as they took home a 2-0 series lead, back home behind Jordan's 42-point masterclass in Game 2. Game 3 was extremely tight, as after 3 overtimes, the Suns pulled through a 129-121 win, even though Jordan had 44 to his name. Phoenix made a desperate attempt to tie the series, but Jordan had other ideas, as 55 points showed Chicago taking a 3-1 lead over Phoenix. Charles Barkley would take Game 5, but in Game 6, Jordan scored every point in the 4th quarter, as with 14.2 seconds left, trailing by 2, John Paxson stepped up and hit a 3-pointer to win the series, and the Bulls won their 3rd straight title. In the offseason, tragedy struck as Michael Jordan's father was murdered while taking a nap in his car. After hearing the news, Jordan decided to retire from the game of basketball, shocking the sporting world. However, after After a short stint as a baseball player, Jordan couldn't help himself anymore as the Bulls struggled in 1995 after making the conference finals in 1994. Chicago let key piece Horace Grant walk to Orlando to join a building contender in the Eastern Conference, leaving the Bulls lacking size and strength as GM Jerry Krause had brought in European favourite Tony Kukoc to bring an offensive spark off the bench to try to replace what Jordan was. Of course, this wasn't a good idea, and what followed was a struggling Bulls team in 95. Jordan made his infamous return to the NBA late in the 1994-95 season, but his rush showed as in his first game back he went 0 for 6 from the field to begin, as he clearly wasn't in basketball shape. Chicago managed to make a playoff push and would play the great Shaquille O'Neal Orlando Magic, the same team they had just let Horace Grant leave for. It didn't take long to see what baseball had done to Michael Jordan, as down the stretches of games he was gassed. He missed his go-to mid-range shots, he turned the ball over, and as a result the Bulls fell in 6 games. The Magic celebrated on the Bulls' home floor, and Jordan was pissed about all this. The very next day after the loss, he began to train his body back to where it needed to be for the 1996 NBA season. Jordan's career so far up until this point was a great one, but it was about to be legendary, as in 1996 he led the Bulls to a 72-10 record as the newly signed Dennis Rodman filled the hole that Horace Grant left. Dennis was a power forward who knew how to rebound and defend. Jordan was back in a big way, as in 1996 he averaged 30 points, 6.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 2 steals on 49.1% shooting, and would lead the Chicago Bulls back to the Eastern Conference Finals, where a rematch with the Orlando Magic would be ready to take place. Jordan this time was more ready for the rematch than the Magic were, as the Bulls made light work of the Orlando Magic, sweeping them in 4 games, as Rodman was able to contain Shaq, and Jordan was too good for the young Magic to handle. Jordan was by far the best player in the league, as in 1996 he'd win the MVP and was back to the NBA Finals, where the Supersonics would meet them. Seattle were the best team in the Western Conference, as they had Gary Payton, the all-time great defensive guard, while pairing him with the lob threat of Sean Kemp. Before the finals, Jordan was out for dinner and he saw his good friend and the coach of the Supersonics, George Karl. Michael went to say hello and Karl completely ignored him. Michael took that personally, as he dominated the series, taking a 3-1 lead of Seattle. It was after Game 4 that Karl made an adjustment to switch Payton onto Jordan. With the new matchup, Seattle won Game 5, but Jordan and the Bulls prevailed in Game 6 on Father's Day. Jordan would win his 4th NBA title and his 4th Finals MVP, as this one meant more than any of the others. After his first full year back in the NBA, Jordan was right where he left off, as in 1997 Jordan averaged 29.6 points, 5.9 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.7 steals on 48.6% shooting, as he led the Bulls to a 69-13 record. Chicago only lost 2 games on the way to their 5th Finals appearance, where this time it was a new foe, the Utah Jazz, led by MVP Karl Malone and all-time assist and steals holder John Stockton. Utah had been good enough to make it to the finals for the last decade, but could never do so. However, this time they pushed the Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler and Charles Barkley Rockets to a 7th game in the West Finals, where John Stockton would hit a dagger 3 to send the Jazz to face Jordan and the Bulls. Michael Jordan had an added motivation coming into the series, as he believed he should have been the MVP over Karl Malone. Game 1 tipped off at the United Center, as Malone and Stockton proved to be a tough matchup for Chicago, as they kept it close. Late in the game, the Bulls just couldn't pull away from Utah, and they found themselves tied 82 apiece with only seconds left. The Bulls decided to run an ISO play with Jordan on Russell, as he found some daylight and buried the jumper at the buzzer to take a 1-0 series lead over Utah. Game 2 wasn't close, as Jordan had 38 points in an 85-97 win. With the Bulls defending home court, Utah needed to back it up. The Jazz managed to pick up crucial wins in games 3 and 4 to tie the series back. Heading into game 5 in Utah, Jordan came down with the flu, as he was sick all night before game 5. As the game got closer, Jordan still wanted to play. The flu game would have gone down in history as a truly historic act, whether he played well or not. In the crucial game 5, Utah got off to a hot start, as they led by 11 at the first break, as Jordan was visibly shaken as he couldn't hit a shot. The Jazz wouldn't have time to celebrate, as the Chicago Bulls were right back in it at half. Fast forward to the 4th quarter, and the Bulls had tied the game at 85 with only 46 seconds left. Jordan found Pippen in the post as he began to work. Utah doubled him and left Jordan open for 3, which he hit. Michael Jordan ended with 38 points in 44 minutes of action, carrying himself and the Bulls to a 3-2 series lead. Jordan was in a better physical condition by game 6, but he was still gassed from the game 5 heroics. Utah built a lead in the second and it looked like they were in prime position. However, they managed to squander the lead away, and Chicago tied the game at 86 late in the 4th. Michael mentioned to Bulls guard Steve Kerr that if Utah doubles, he's going to be open and he will need to take the shot. Coming out of the timeout, Jordan received the ball from Pippen. Utah doubles, Jordan steps through 2 defenders and found Kerr, and the rest was history, as Steve Kerr hit the game winner and the Chicago Bulls won their 5th NBA title, as Jordan proved to be the best player in the history of the NBA. Coming into the 1998 NBA season, GM Jerry Krause made it clear that Coach Phil Jackson would not be returning in 1999. Michael Jordan was not pleased with the revelation and vowed that he would never play for another coach ever again. This seemed to not bother the Bulls front office, as Jerry Krause made a statement addressing the situation by stating that the Bulls would love to have Jordan back, but if he leaves, it's his choice, not theirs. At this point, Jordan accepted that this would be his last time playing for the Chicago Bulls, and it would be his last dance. As the season began, it became clear that it may have been a good time to call it quits, as Scottie Pippen refused to play for the team and wanted to be traded, as even he could see the writing on the wall. The Bulls struggled early in the season as Dennis Rodman was acting up. Rodman was ejected late in an important game and he knew he messed up. That night, Rodman came to Jordan's hotel room and talked it out. From that point on, Dennis was back and Chicago started to get back in the winning list. With all this winning, Scottie Pippen decided it was a good time to undo his statements and rejoin the team. Rodman and Pippen had clearly slowed, but MJ was still the same old beast. As in 1998, Jordan won the MVP on averages of 28.7 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals on 46.5% from the field. Waiting in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Larry Bird coach Indiana Pacers with the all-time great three-point shooter Reggie Miller and the all-time great passer Mark Jackson. Indiana pushed the Bulls to a Game 7, but Chicago were too good. Indiana collapsed under the pressure late in the game as the Bulls steamrolled back to the finals, where they would yet again play the now experienced Utah Jazz. Game 1 tipped off in Utah as they held the home court advantage over Chicago during the series. Game 1 was very close throughout and would need an extra 5 minutes to decide the winner. In overtime, John Stockton came alive and the Utah Jazz pulled through to take a 1-0 lead in the series. Game 6 was here, and early on in the piece, Scottie Pippen would sustain a chronic back injury which kept him in and out for extended periods of time during the game. As a result, Karl Malone dominated, but Michael Jordan, being Michael Jordan, kept the ship afloat. At the half, Chicago were down by 4 as Scottie Pippen returned but was merely a decoy, as Jordan was left to take all the shots and began to fatigue. Utah were pushing for a Game 7 and looked like they just might get it. With only a minute and a half left, one of the greatest stretches in NBA history would commence. Jordan had to take over as he drove right and finished over Russell as he cut it to a 1-point game. With Utah in possession, Stockton feeds Malone in the post. Jordan commits a double team and steals the ball away. Now coming the other way, Jordan lets the seconds tick for a final shot. With only 6 seconds left, Jordan crosses Russell and buries the series-winning shot as Jordan becomes the greatest athlete in pro sports history. Prime Michael Jordan has to be the greatest prime of any player in any sport, as over the course of 8 years, Jordan won 6 NBA championships and led a team from rags to riches, proving himself to be the greatest basketball player of all time. Watch this video next to find out the top 20 NBA players in the current era of basketball.